All right, everybody. It had been known for a while now, but just a day or two ago, the Seahawks finally made it official. They finally came out and said what we all kind of knew, that Clint Hurtt was going to be our new defensive coordinator for 2022. So they actually made a lot of announcements with regards to the new coaching staff. A lot of it was just moving some people around. But we did bring on a couple new people. I may make a video in the next couple of days about some of the little adjustments we made to the staff. But earlier today, Clint Hurtt came out and gave a press conference, his first press conference as defensive coordinator with the Seahawks. And he said some things, and he said some things that were pretty interesting too. And I want to talk about it a little bit. Now, as we all know, saying it is one thing, but doing it is another thing. There are a lot of people, and you can pretty much count me among those people, who need to see it before they totally believe it. Honestly, we all should probably be part of that group. You shouldn't believe it until you see it. But I wanted to go over some of the stuff he said to try to get a feel for what we might be looking at in 2022 with this defense, because obviously that's an area of the team that has been barely above average over the last 4 years. Not a single year in the last four have they been a top 10 defense. So it's going to be very crucial to our ability to get back to where we want to get to, that this works itself out. So first thing that I want to pull from his press conference earlier today was his talking about Sean Desai. So I've got a series of tweets here from Corbin Smith, Greg Bell, Curtis Crabtree, Brady Henderson, Michael Sean Dugar, Adam Jude. Let's just go over them and try to get a feel for what he was going over in this press conference. He said it was critical for Seahawks to land Desai due to his defensive coordinator and passing game background, which kind of makes sense, right? Because Clint Hurtt, as a defensive coordinator, is probably going to have a little more experience with the run game. Because one thing you can say about this defense over the last several years is that it has mostly been very good against the run. It's the passing game where they start to struggle. So it kind of makes sense that bringing in Desai to be the passing game backup, sort of, that it makes sense that he would draw some attention to that. He also said he expects to blend some of what he learned under Vic Fangio with Pete Carroll's schematics, and Desai will help with that. So, like we kind of saw as 2021 went on, it seems like you are going to continue to see the progression of this defense going from a pure Pete Carroll defense, the cover three, migrating towards Vic Fangio. It's that thing I was talking about where we continue that evolution towards Fangio stuff. So next, he continued to talk about Sean Desai. He commended the new associate head coach, Sean Desai, who he called Doc, for high football IQ, ability to counter what offenses throw at him in regards to coverage, and his penchant for teaching technique in the secondary. It's that last part that really kind of caught my attention here, and I'll get into a little more on that a little later in this video. But the other guy on this coaching staff who is known for his penchant for teaching technique in the secondary would be Pete Carroll. There's been a decent amount of talk lately about how Desai is being brought in partially to be groomed as Pete Carroll's replacement in a few years. And that kind of overlap, I think, lends some credence to that thought. You're bringing in a guy who can do some of the things that Carroll is still really good at. For everything negative that I say about Carroll, how I feel like he can't do this anymore, doesn't do that anymore, never did this that well, can't draft, doesn't understand offense, doesn't understand a lot of this modern stuff, he's stubborn, etc., etc. There are two things that I generally feel very comfortable admitting in his camp. One is that the players play hard for him pretty much no matter what. And two is he's good with those defensive backs. And even last year, as bad as last season was, we saw it again with Sidney Jones. So I found this kind of interesting because there's already been some buzz that Desai's going to be the next Seahawks head coach, which, depending on how the next couple years go, I would certainly be okay with that. But the fact that there's a little bit of overlap there, it does make you wonder how it's going to work in the short term, but it does make you think this might be some sort of a long-term answer. Greg Bell has this from Hurt as well from his press conference today. Their defense, the Seahawks defense, is in a transition right now from so much Pete Carroll cover 3 and Legion of Boom days that NFL offenses caught on to into more man coverage, more variations with blitzing, and I think he meant to say disguising. We are adjusting and things are going to be changing. So this is good, definitely, because I do think the cover 3 has been largely figured out by these NFL offenses. I think it's been figured out for a while. I think teams with good personnel who really know what they're doing can beat the cover 3. But when I say beat the cover 3, I mean they may not drop 40 on you, but they're going to have long drives, they're going to avoid turnovers, and they're going to dominate time of possession. So the fact that you have people on our coaching staff acknowledging this fact and acknowledging that there is a need to transition to something else, and the fact that you already saw that transition in 2021 is really encouraging. And of anything that's coming out of this that deserves some Kool-Aid drinking, it's probably this. Now, the downshot is that are we going to see some struggles this season from the defense because we're doing different things, because we're changing the way we're conducting our business on defense? That may be somewhat of a possibility. You do have a brand new defensive coordinator, a young one, not a lot of experience. You do have a defense that is changing the way they're doing things, but the good news is Clint Hurtt was here last year, and this transition has been happening for the last year anyway. It's not like it's all going to be brand new. So I definitely take this to be a good thing, but there is a little part of me that is wondering, could the first month of games this season be a little bit bumpy because it's going to be new? Curtis Crabtree also had this to say. Hurt also said that he really believes in the 3-4 system that he worked in under Vic Fangio, and while they are going to remain multiple in their structure, they will incorporate more of those elements into their defense going forward. Now, I like this from the perspective of I think Jamal Adams will do better in a 3-4, and we'll talk more about Jamal later. But the fact that Hurt is talking about the 3-4 and basically implying that you're going to see a hybrid defense in Seattle where you have 3-4 looks and 4-3 looks, theoretically, I think that's a good idea. What I am concerned about is how are you going to utilize your personnel? Because we have some guys on this defense who are probably or definitely going to be here who may not fit in well in that 3-4. Like Darrell Taylor can be an outside linebacker in a 3-4, no problem. But can Carlos Dunlap? I don't think so. So it depends on how we mix and match things with our personnel. I don't want to see Dunlap as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I don't want to see Alton Robinson as a 3-4 outside linebacker. So if we want to run this hybrid 3-4 and 4-3 defense, that's great. But at the same time, I don't want to be forcing a bunch of players into bad situations just to force that hybrid. 2020, the Cowboys kind of tried that with Mike Nolan, and it really didn't go well. They had a bunch of 4-3 guys. They tried to run a hybrid with a 3-4, and it didn't work. Corbin Smith said this in regards to the secondary. Hurt says Seahawks will still employ the step kick technique in press coverage with cornerbacks, even with Desai and Carl Scott joining staff. This is going to be the part where it's really interesting to watch. You've got some of these new defensive coaches coming in, like Desai, like Carl Scott, to a certain extent Clint Hurtt, although he's not new. But you still got Pete Carroll, and he still wants to have his say in the way things are run. How is this going to come together? That's one of the areas where you could see some friction. Hurt has reiterated on several occasions that the Seahawks need to improve how much they utilize their personnel just as much as adding talent. He and Pete Carroll feel they have good pieces in place, but maximizing personnel will be necessary to put it all together. So, again, words are words, actions are actions, but at least he is verbally acknowledging the fact that having things like a hybrid defense is one thing, but forcing players into situations where they're doing things they're not comfortable doing is not going to help. Like I said, if we want to incorporate a lot of 3-4 in 2022, I think that's cool, but I don't want it to involve Carlos Dunlap playing in an uncomfortable situation where he's going to have to be playing in coverage or he's going to have to move to the inside. I don't think that's the best way to utilize his talents. So if Dunlap is going to stick around in 2022, which salary cap wise he probably will, you got to understand how to utilize those guys properly. And when you start talking about things like that, you start talking about tells in your defense. But this is definitely something I'm going to have to see before I believe. But I have mixed thoughts on that. Brady Henderson had this from Hurtt. He emphatically volunteered that we are going to do something significantly different this year in that we are going to be more aggressive. Said that means more blitzing, maybe not a ton more. Jamal Adams, I hope you're listening. And also applies to the way they cover, not being so zony. So I like the fact that they're changing, but I'm very interested to see how that change flows. Because you still got Pete Carroll, you still know the way he likes to do things. George Brereton, welcome to the channel, buddy. So you've got a coach who has spent decades and decades doing cover 3, and now you've got Clint Hurtt saying, we're going to do a little more man defense. We're going to be more blitzy, which is obviously great news for guys like Jamal Adams. And I'll even say Jordan Brooks. I think Jordan Brooks could be a little more dangerous on the blitz if we allowed him to blitz every now and then. So I like this. I am wondering how it's going to work. And this is just going to have to be one of those things where I'll believe it when I see it. When we get to week 7 and I still see this defense doing different things and Pete Carroll's not butting in, then I'm going to be like, okay, it's coming together. But we'll have to get there first. Michael Sean Dugar on Twitter echoed the sentiment of the Seahawks defense being more aggressive in coverage and pass rush. Lack of aggression has been a big problem for this team lately, which is why we give up so many long drives and force so few turnovers, so that's great news. Brady Henderson has this on the Jamal Adams topic. Can he still be the impact rusher he was in 2020 before Seattle stopped blitzing him? Absolutely, Jamal is still a difference maker. Said he was in a new world in 21 by being put in positions that weren't in his background, which really makes you angry about the way things went in 2021 because Jamal had been with the team for a year at that point. The defense had been in place for years. Why the hell was 2021 the year to start throwing Jamal around? But maybe we can figure out a way to make this work in 2022. Maybe. Obviously, the Vic Fangio stuff we brought in, you would hope that would actually work towards Jamal's strengths because he disguises what he does with his safeties a little bit more in general. But it needs to actually work on the field. And many people, like myself, are taking a wait-and-see approach with things like this. But the utilization of Jamal Adams has to be the most important wrinkle with this defense in 2022. So the fact that Hurtt is addressing it directly is good. Adam Jude also kind of echoes that sentiment. Diagramming new ways to use safety Jamal Adams has become an immediate priority, maybe priority number 1 for Hurtt. How we use him, that's on me, Hurtt said. So presumably he's going to blitz more, he's going to play in the box more. Hopefully you won't see 40% cover 2 being a last line of defense type safety. We're going to try to put him in situations where he has a chance to be the best Jamal Adams that he can be. And I'm going to say what I've always said with Jamal Adams. The dude made the All-Pro team with Adam Gase and Greg Williams as his coaches on a bad Jets team. Don't tell me he doesn't know how to play. Don't tell me he's bad. Okay? That doesn't make any sense. Adam Gase is one of the worst head coaches in recent memory. Greg Williams is a meme. And Jamal Adams looked like the next great safety with those two guys. So it's not a Jamal Adams thing. I don't believe that. It's on us to use him properly. Corbin had one last tweet that I think is going to really win over the fans. Clint Hurtt says he's a D-line guy, so he doesn't want his defensive linemen going backwards in coverage. Sometimes those schemes will call for that, but he emphasizes they will be rushing, not dropping into the flat, and players were calling asking about that. So seems to me that he has an understanding on that level at least about how to put these guys in good situations, which makes me hopeful about the hybrid defense thing and utilizing guys like Dunlap properly. Guys like Dunlap and even Poona Ford and Al Woods dropped back into coverage way too much in 2021. And it's not that dropping guys into coverage is always a bad thing, but it never seemed like it worked very well when we did it. So it doesn't seem like it's our personnel strength. So this is definitely good news. So, yeah, a lot of what he said sounds good to me, but you have to wonder how it's going to work because you still got Pete there. He wants to do things one way. He chose to bring in a bunch of guys who seem like they want to do things at least somewhat differently. More man, more disguising pre-snap, more blitzing, more aggression. How's it going to work? How is it going to work? Is it going to be too many cooks? Or is Pete going to step back and let these guys do what they need to do? We'll see. But I like everything Clint Hurtt had to say, for whatever that's worth. And I feel a lot better about it knowing that a guy like Sean Desai is here. So, hey, I said that if Clint Hurtt is the guy, I can't say anything bad about him. I just was a little put off by his resume. But with Desai here, I feel good about it. And I think Hurt's got a chance. And the way he's talking about things, it seems like there are some basic fundamentals of how to utilize your defensive talent that he understands. So I'll catch you guys later tonight in stream. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below about all this. But hey, he's saying all the right things so far. So early days of the Clint Hurtt era, we're off to a good start.